Welcome everybody back to Illuminate Local. I'm your host, Jesse Dolan. We've got a great episode here today. We got Adam Chronister on. Adam and I have known each other for a while. I think we met maybe at a mastermind in Vegas a number of years back now. I think it was the first one I went to like post-COVID, which was pretty nice. Yeah. And Adam, you were on a former podcast that I had, did an interview for that, which was great. So I'm excited to bring you back on here today. If people don't know about you, CEO and founder of Enleaf, right? Mm-hmm. Digital marketing and SEO expert, speaker, been featured in Wall Street Journal. I think you were on MSN is the MSN one, the top 10 disruptive entrepreneurs to watch in 2025?
Yeah, that was exciting.
Which was awesome.
To be placed.
What do you think? What does that mean, right, for everybody? Top 10 disruptive entrepreneurs to watch in 2025, right? Why disruptive? It sounds cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's an honor to get picked up in something like that, of course. I don't know. It's rather humbling as well, I guess. But I think for me, it's just really trying to embrace the technological change that, us founders and marketers and entrepreneurs are seeing all the time, but now more so than ever with the introduction of AI and large language models, it's kind of like we got this new Wild West that we're embarking on, right? Which is, it's exciting and frightening all at the same time, right? And so I've had the benefit of, I guess, being around long enough to see such technological changes. I'm sure, you're probably a similar age to me where you remember the early days of the internet, right? And I remember how instrumental that is. I mean, my whole career, I can benefit towards the introduction of the internet and then later search engines, right? And so now it's almost like we get a chance, to, I wouldn't say reinvent the wheel, so to speak, but there's new opportunities that we don't even probably know about yet, right? And that's, again, there is some of this fear of the unknown, right? I know there's a lot of people, particularly in the digital marketing realm, that are somewhat nervous for the potential disruption and aspects of that they're already seeing in their businesses. And businesses as well, I think, if they're wise, would be paying attention and at least having some optimistic concern about the shift in the landscape. But nonetheless, anytime there are technological shifts, there are also opportunities to be had. And so yeah, it's just a fun, interesting time to be alive, to go through another technological revolution. In my time here on the planet is kind of fascinating and exciting to see. So,
well, it's kind of, I don't want to say fun as a marketer is the right word, because it's scary too, right? Like you're alluding to some various facets of it. But although Google's changed, search has changed over the last few years before the AI influx, if you will, fairly static, right? We're talking about getting visibility, getting found. You mean Google, right? Like historically, that's what we've been talking about for the last like 10 years. It's different now, right? There's all kinds of facets to local visibility. So I guess that leads me to one of my first questions here for you is, whether it be leveraging AI or like within AI, in your view, how can business owners, marketing managers listening leverage AI to gain visibility, particularly in their local market, right? Kind of on that local level. Anything you're seeing out there right now, which may be different next month, right? Or even next year, but right now, presently as we're recording, what's your feedback on that?
Yeah, I mean, the very first thing I tell people is just to get involved in it, right? I think the answer to that question can vary from business to business, from industry to industry, market to market. But I would say, one, don't get overwhelmed. Start simple, right? Get into large language model. Start exploring Google's AI overviews, which are relatively new. Whether you're building roofs or a plumber, or whatever it is, like, get curious. I think that's the key thing, right? And then, you don't have to be an expert in this stuff to utilize it and benefit from it. Simply go to something like ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini, whatever it is, and put in your particular business and start asking questions like, hey, this is my business. This is my business challenge. What, what steps or processes would you suggest, speaking to the large language model, to improve what I'm doing this year, right? Some people, I had somebody the other day reach out on Facebook and they asked like, hey, I'm new to AI. How do I get started? I don't even know where to start and I'd like to learn. I said, well, honestly, the best thing you could do is take that question you just posted in the comments on Facebook, go to ChatGPT and paste that there. And you're going to get a way better answer than I'm probably going to be able to give you, right? And you're going to get links and references. And so really, this is just, this is just the evolution of search as we know it, yeah. Right? And so, get out there and explore, experiment, and embrace it, have fun. Don't get too worried, because that's, that's going to put you in the opposite direction where, embracing technology typically is going to be the best option for those involved.
Yeah. Not too late, right? Like, you didn't miss the boat. You're not going to be overwhelmed if you jump in now, like you're saying, just experiment. I want to go back, Adam. You said, just again, for the managers, owners, marketers listening, you said use Google AI overview and kind of get used to it. People are used to going to Google, doing search, things like that. Can you break it down for everybody? Maybe they've never looked at this. What do you mean when you say that for everybody?
Yeah, I think it's funny because all of us use search engines, right? Probably every day. Business owners, are no exception. And the thing that I find ironic is we don't often stop and think about the results. We do our search for whatever it is we're looking for. We get in, we get out, and we call it a day. But if you're a business owner and you have some need or desire to get visibility in search, which, let's be honest, most people do, at least they're going to benefit from that. It behooves you to kind of understand what's going on, right? So I talk to our clients. I tell them, like, put yourself in the shoe of a marketer or your competition or whatever it is. Put in some search terms relative to your product or service and look at what the results are, right? And then try that in different verticals. Do it with an incognito window. Try it with a different browser. Test out the difference between your phone and your desktop, because a lot of people aren't aware that the search results do vary and differ depending on the environments, right? So it's the same thing that I see is not necessarily going to be the same thing you see, but the idea is to get a good sense of what that real estate looks like. I like to look at things like search engines and their results as digital real estate, right? At the end of the day, our goal is to get, our clients the most digital real estate as possible. So that can look like Google search, that can look like Google advertising. It can be like placements and increased visibility in maps, right? At the end of the day, we're trying just to get the most of that digital real estate so that when interested parties are looking for someone's product or service, you're more likely to show up than your competition, right? And that can, of course, expand beyond search, right? There's other realms and verticals, social media marketing, and direct marketing, all of that other stuff. But the idea at the end of the day is to become either the answer or solution to your potential client's problem, and or be front of mind whenever that particular problem or need comes to the mind of your potential consumer, correct?
Yeah. I like what you're saying too with the digital real estate. We're finding that, I wouldn't say to an exact science here or per client or per entity, but the more you practice that right now, like ChatGPT, for example, right? It's not indexing all your web pages and site, right? It's doing research to give you these answers. And right. The more real estate you're taking up digitally, right, the more prominent, the more trust you have with them, just like you would us human beings too, right? If I'm searching for something and I see your brand 3 or 4 times on that page or around search, you have authority, you're sticking out to me.
Yeah.
Same for getting found right now, at least in some of these chat models, because they're doing the same things we would as humans. They're just doing it faster, better, or while we, do something else for us. So great nugget for everybody, right? For a tip or trick, if you will. On that, Adam, another question for you is, I guess, so that's kind of my 2 cents on how it works a little bit with AI search. What's your opinion? I know you put out, I think it was like the blog post or maybe a tweet or something I saw of ChatGPT using Bing, right, for some of the results and kind of
Right.
as a bit of a backbone. How do you think this works, or maybe help explain to people how, if you go to ChatGPT and search for something, how is that different than going to Google right now? And what's good, what's bad, what's your breakdown of that difference?
Yeah. So, we have to think of large language models essentially as a new type of search engine, right? And the job of a large language model is to parse data. This is why you can have, there are systems where you can create your own agents, for instance, where you create and put in front of those agents or behind them your own data sources, right? And so every large language model has its data source. So we talked about Bing and ChatGPT. Of course, they have a partnership. And so a lot of the information and data that shows up, at least that is available on the web and querying the web when it comes to OpenAI and ChatGPT, is coming from Microsoft Bing, right? And so that's one area where it's like us as digital marketers, especially in the SEO realm, I think need to be more cognizant of, Microsoft Bing, where in years past they had such low market share that for many of us it was kind of an afterthought, right?
Right.
And same thing with Google and their AI overviews. Same idea, different frame or wrapper, right? Um, these large language models, just like search engines, have to understand how to best parse information. Now, the way that they parse information and organize and prioritize, what shows up is quite different, right? Large language models, hence the name language, cling a lot more onto semantics and relevance, and they aggregate content as opposed to direct referential, pinpoints like a search engine, right? So that is kind of how the things vary, right? But one of the things that we're starting to really emphasize with our clientele is a continuation of a focus on building a brand and differentiators within businesses, products, and services. And the idea there is, and we've seen this even from search engines like Google, where they've tried to figure out ways to better orient what constitutes an authoritative brand versus what doesn't. Right? There's always this potentiality to get spam or less than relevant content in search, and so forever, search engines have been trying to combat that, and a big part of that problem is resolved on how do we identify what constitutes as an established authoritative brand versus what doesn't. I think large language models very much have the capability to do that as well. And then at the end of the day, because we are in this window of disruption, I, in some regard, want to go back to the basics, right? I find myself these days a lot more thinking about the traditional days of marketing. And I'm talking like almost pre-TV, where you have radio and billboards, right? You think about the old classic Coca-Cola ads, or whatever the brand was out there, and so they had to use like psychology and like traditional marketing to establish brands. And I think we as marketers need to figure out how to go back to some of that basic element without necessarily avoiding the technology, right? Because I think these things are going to start emerging more and more. And LLMs, from my estimation, introduce an opportunity to better distinguish authority and brands just because of their ability to aggregate large sets of data from a social media profile to a search query to a website, put these all into a mix, boil them all together and say, okay, here is the brands or the references that need to show up. Whereas search engines, in some regard, although fairly complex, are arguably less sophisticated than large language models, right? So yeah, that's kind of where my head has been at as far as a lot of these kind of things, right?
Well, always data, right? The data points, trust in the data. With regards to AI, what should we all be looking at, kind of backing up the points you're just making? What data are we looking at? What kind of hard points, what kind of KPIs when it comes to AI should we be paying attention to right now to take advantage of this and to show up, right? Get that visibility. So,
Yeah, I mean, the key is at this juncture, and I don't see this changing drastically. A lot of the same tactics that we leveraged for search engine optimization are also going to be the same tactics that we leverage for large language models. Only I think the priority could start to shift, right? In the realm of search engine optimization, there's a lot of talk about off-page SEO. Usually this comes in the realm of link building. I don't think that's necessarily going away. But I kind of have a theory that the priority of things like backlinks are going to diminish over time, only because it seems like things like contextual relevance, metadata, schema markup, that large language models would be better suited by utilizing those as kind of a first point of reference, while still probably, again, depending on the model, referencing things like link authority, backlink authority. I could imagine that Google is probably still including some of that in their relevance, although it's really hard to say at this point. But those are some of the conversations we're having internally. We're starting to test, slowing down on an emphasis on backlink acquisition, particularly for a couple of clients who are kind of in our case study cadence, right? With their participation, we're like, hey, we're going to back off on your backlink acquisition, double down on contextual relevance, technical SEO, and those kind of things, and see how it impacts you not only in search, but also where we're starting to show up within large language models. The other challenge that we're still kind of in the midst of is attribution within large language models. We're still really in kind of a mid-tier period where there are not a lot of systems that are doing a good job with that. Now, Google just announced recently that Google Search Console is soon to be looking at some kind of large language model attribution, but I don't believe at this juncture we have dates or details on that. Only an announcement that this is something they're working on, right?
If you go on out to illuminatelocal.com, look for the yellow button at the top, free SEO audit. It gives you a score of your page against whatever keyword you're trying to optimize and rank for. And it's going to give you the highlights of where your site stands in terms of local SEO factors like the GBP, the local directories, content, things like that. And also show you where some holes are, show you what's good. It's fast, it's free, use it over and over, and gives you a pretty good punch list for your clear directions on what your next steps are. Again, just head over to illuminatelocal.com, look for the free SEO audit button, and leverage that.
And so I think that will become more prominent over time. Just like any technological change, it introduces new problems. The big problem right now is how do you attribute traffic from things like Grok or ChatGPT, and in some regard, probably Gemini as well, although Google has that infrastructure, I'm sure, being their ecosystem. But it introduces new problems. So there are going to be entrepreneurs as well as businesses that are already established that I think are going to come along to help solve those problems. And thus, we kind of come back to the thesis of there are new opportunities in the horizon that most of us are probably not even aware of yet as new problems arise.
Yeah, a lot to emerge, right? To your point, it's just, we don't even know where this is going to go. We're just trying to figure out right now today what's happening and how to leverage
it, right?
The key.
So that's the point, is like, just, get your hands wet, because you may not even know the problem or the solution right now, but if you're playing with the tools, then you're going to be ready to start, putting hammer to nail when an idea or an opportunity arises, right? And again, this could be business to business, right? There are a lot of blue collar businesses still to this day that are not utilizing even basic technology. I'm still amazed this day, like how many businesses don't have a website or have never done any kind of digital marketing. They're doing the bare minimum. And so there's still plenty of opportunity out there. It's just the opportunity availability is going to shift, and the technology, the processes and procedures are going to shift as well. And so, get involved before you do get behind. But to your point, we're still early days in my estimation. I don't think anyone who gets involved now is anywhere near being close to being behind. But there will be a day where if you put your head in the sand, you will find that you're behind the curve, right?
Yeah, and there's so many ways to use whatever, just AI, large language models, like you're saying, however we want to reference them as a group, whether it be marketing to get found or leveraging it to scale or be efficient with your business. There should be some edges you're bumping into to get this experience. I want to go back. You were talking about like some of the metrics and the visibility. I think the one thing that's really challenging with the AI, regardless of the platform, is you're talking about how do we attribute traffic?
Mm-hmm.
How do we attribute? I know you don't have the answer to this, but just as a maybe venting and frustrated myself as a marketer, how do we attribute the impressions, right? That just nobody even clicked through, but maybe there is this awesome, snippet, if you will, that gets shown by AI that helps your brand. It like was really, really good. And you're now resting in somebody's mind, but you never got that click. There was no data point, right, for you to get that tangible connection. That's tricky. I mean, it can help you if you're showing up and we can do our own testing, but like that's undiscoverable almost, right? At this point. So
yeah, I mean, it is challenging. Like, and that's kind of the conversations we've had with clients as of late is that, there are KPIs that we've used in the past that are going to become more and more obfuscated. We've seen, click-through rate for some brands and services has, essentially been cut in half, right? And we can see and track things like direct traffic, which a lot of large language models, essentially accept their traffic as direct traffic. But even then, you can't see where that's coming from necessarily. You just see that metric is on the rise, right? And then we're seeing things like inside of platforms like Shopify, we're starting to see some very basic attribution where we can see traffic coming from things like ChatGPT, but really not given much more information beyond that, right? And so it is challenging, because we tread the path to a particular trajectory with particular KPIs, and now we're having to be more agile and kind of help bridge that gap, right? And so I don't have a perfect answer for that, other than it's like, we have to think more, I think, holistically and broadly about what we're doing. And attribution it's not like it's a new challenge. It's been a challenge for quite some time. I mean, even looking at examples of how different systems do attribution, right? One of the big challenges that we have as a digital marketing company is the difference in how Shopify, for instance, does attribution, which they're still doing like last click attribution, and how Google Analytics does attribution. They're doing a data-driven attribution model, right? And so if you compare these two things, it becomes starkly different, right? In fact, we wrote a blog post on this because we were getting so many questions from clients like, hey, why is my Shopify attribution data different than Google Analytics? And we have to explain, like, well, the way that they do attribution is different, right? And the pros and cons to each, right? And so I don't think attribution is going to become less of a problem. It's going to become more and more of a challenging problem, especially as things get fractured, right? And that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing more of a fractionalization. And so as marketers and business owners, I think we're going to have to get more comfortable with the idea of attribution being more and more blurred over time, right? And the ironic thing is there are businesses that invest, tens of millions of dollars on brand building activities without any real, super close the gap key on attribution, right? How, for instance, do I measure the value of a brand like Nike or Coke, right? You know what I mean? Like somebody goes and buys some tennis shoes from Foot Locker. There's some, let's say they're Nike. How do I attribute that they actually saw an advertisement over a span of 3 years, and that was the motivator for them to buy, right?
Right.
Or maybe they saw a social media ad, and that was the thing that triggered them to like, oh, I have affinity for that brand. And so yeah, like it's not a perfect answer because we obviously, if we invest money in marketing, we want to be able to attribute that to the dollar and cent. But I think at least in the short term, um, we're going to have to get more comfortable with looking at the large trend. Like, is your bottom line growing? Is your
Yeah.
generalized traffic across channels, direct referral, organic paid, is it growing? And then figure out where we can attribute things in the minutia, right? So
I think that's a good, for me, at least in my mind, a segue. Another topic I wanted to run past you. You were on another podcast. The name is escaping me offhand, but talking about if you want to have this authority, right? Like you're talking like Nike, Coca-Cola, these brands, just ubiquitous to us out there, but they have that authority, and how we can gain as local marketers, starting in your own backyard first, right? If you're
right.
some up in the Minnesota area, if I want to be ranking or get visibility, if you will, in Minneapolis, but if I'm 30 miles outside of Minneapolis, now if I'm not ranking, or I think as you put it, like the rock star in my own hometown,
Mm-hmm.
good luck,
Yeah.
going to the major metropolitan area. And so same kind of thing here. Maybe you can't attribute in your hometown why somebody clicked or why somebody, leverage your call to action. But if
Uh-huh.
you're a rock star, it kind of doesn't matter, right? You just know you're out there.
Sure.
Can you share some insights on why you believe that, which I 100% agree with? And maybe
Uh-huh.
what does that mean, again, to these local businesses listening or watching here? How do they take action to be that rock
Yeah.
star?
I mean, there's a lot of ways. Like I think you have to get involved in your community, right? However that looks. There's different ways from, various business and chamber groups. Get involved in social media marketing as best as you can, right? I think that's an opportunity. Um, get involved in generalized digital marketing, right? Because that might bridge the gap. Somebody might see you at a business, development group or in, on your social media profile, and then do a search for you and see an ad that pops up or see your listing in the organic results. Really, at the end of the day, like my goal and what I emphasize with a lot of our clients is you want to be the person, the business, the authority that comes to mind when your potential clientels are ready to pull the trigger on what it is that you do, right? That's something that we've implemented in our brand. And I have people that they reach out to me and like, yeah, I've been following your stuff for years, and I wasn't ready, 3 years ago to launch a website or do digital marketing. Um, Nonetheless, I've kept an eye on what you're doing, and now I'm ready, and you're the person I want to work with, right? That happens to me all the time, but it doesn't happen overnight, right? You do have to establish yourself. I think part of that too gets into the realm of working on the business and not in the business. Like I think we've all heard this. Sometimes I roll my eyes when I hear that, but it's true, right? And that doesn't always mean that you as the business owner, operator, CEO, or founder have to do everything. In fact, you should be leveraging other people, their skills and their capabilities to help you with these other verticals, be it hiring a marketing company to build your brand or to help you with, dominance in search, to build a paid advertising strategy, right? But nonetheless, you should have some kind of strategy to build a brand, whether it's a personal brand or the brand of the business or some combination of the two, right? I do see, it seems like these days, there is a lot more interest in having a personal face to the brand, right? And so
Sure.
I do challenge businesses to do that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the owner and founder, but you should have somebody who's established and committed to the business, that can also be the face of the brand, right? Somebody that you trust that's going to be there for the long run. Most times that's going to be a founder or CEO, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But nonetheless, it seems like market behavior is becoming more and more attractive to the person behind the brand, regardless of how big or small the company is. But even outside of that, you know, really focusing on that brand and then leveraging all the different channels that can build upon that, from search to social to, good old, PR and branding, right?
They leverage these different channels. Just to be clear for everybody, you're saying like you better be active in them, posting on them, engaging in
Right.
them,
Yeah.
not just maybe writing a blog post and just randomly throwing up snippets everywhere, but
Right.
participating and
Yeah.
doing it regularly, things like this. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, we don't have the luxury anymore of just having a single channel marketing approach, right? It used to be a very common where businesses could survive and thrive off of one marketing channel, right? Maybe they got really good at SEO, right, and that worked really well. Maybe they got really good at running ads in search, or really good at Facebook advertising or Facebook marketing. Um, I think the days of having a single channel marketing approach and having it be extremely successful are far and few between, right? Now, the beauty of having and testing multiple channels is, often you'll find ones that outperform others, but nonetheless, like as business owners, we now have to be thinking multi-channel approach, right? And let's be honest, if you're a small business owner, that's challenging, if not almost impossible to do on your own,
Yeah.
right? And so that's where you need partners. You need to bring in outside support, or even potentially hire someone in house. But some of the advantages you're going to get with an agency is typically you're going to get access to a multifaceted team of experts in different disciplines, right?
Yeah. Always tell people, just like you as a business and a business owner are an expert in what you're selling. And if somebody was to come to you and say, well, I should just do that myself versus patronizing you,
Right.
you'd have all the reasons in the world on why. No, that, like, trust me, we got your back
Right.
on this.
Yeah.
But those same business owners often feel like they can just be Superman or Superwoman in a marketing
Yeah.
side of things, just do it all themselves because that's part of the sales and marketing of their business, not looking at it as,
Right.
this silo of talent, right? Or things to do that maybe somebody else could be as effective, if not more, and then free you up to be your
Yeah. I
rock
mean,
star,
there's
right?
a reason I don't change my own oil. Now, could I? Yeah, I've done it before. I mean, I could go on YouTube and watch some videos, but one, I don't have the skills and training, to not maybe make a mistake. Two, like, my time is better served doing what I do best, right?
Right.
And there's probably a handful of other reasons why it doesn't make sense for me to, you know, fix my own engine or change my own oil. Like, I would
Right.
much rather take my car to a mechanic who that is their livelihood. That's what they do. They're going to do it, right the first time. So I'm saving time and money, at the end of the day, right? It's
Yeah.
it's the same with anything, especially marketing.
Yep. Yeah. Just play to your strengths, right? And if you're trying to grow your business, especially, you know, have some professional support,
Yeah.
right? Whether they completely do it for you or pull up next to you at least. Um, trust that.
Right.
Want to expand also, or see if you agree with me, maybe is a better way to put it. You talk about being involved in all these channels, right? And I
Right.
think that's good advice for everybody, kind of twofold. One is you can be found in these channels. Just take like Facebook, or
Mhm.
Facebook's probably a good example. I think people are searching in Facebook more than they used to, whether it be a
Sure.
saw post and you want to learn more or whatever.
Yeah.
Again, it's not just Google. So take that, to all platforms. People, you can not only reach people and get exposure to them, but they are using them now to search and gather information. And
Sure.
secondly, so you can reach people through these different platforms now, but then also if you're engaged in all these platforms, again, back to something like a ChatGPT, if it's
Uh-huh.
doing a search, it'll see you in all these platforms, and that's, you get that
Exactly.
authority and kind of that dominance as well.
Yep.
You agree, or do you have anything else to shed on that?
No, I think you nailed it on the head. Like, that's part of the point, is like, and search engines are really no different. The modern search engines are aggregating data from Facebook and Twitter and all these other platforms,
Right.
right? And so search isn't just like text-based blue links anymore, right? And that, again, that's why I encourage people, like, search your name, search your business, see what comes up. Like, do you see a lot of YouTubes in the search results, right? But maybe you've never done a YouTube video. Well, you should be doing that. You should be thinking that as your, SEO strategy, so to speak, right? Same with maps. If you're not in maps and you see that, others in your market are, like, there's some work to be done there. And so the same things generally hold to be true with search engines as they do with large language models. The more pervasive you can be in these platforms, the more likely you're going to show up when these systems aggregate results based on these platforms, right? And so, the modern day of SEO, quite honestly, involves social media marketing and PR and, general website, presence. Like, all of these things kind of now have to be factored into what we used to call, search engine optimization.
Right. Used to. That's kind of scary when you say it like that.
Yeah.
So going down the rabbit hole for everybody here, I didn't read your blog post on this yet because I wanted to kind of learn it from you here on the fly. Email SEO. I kind of read the headline. So not only is all this traditional stuff, but what the heck are we talking about now that our emails actually matter to some degree in search?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Google recently announced that they are going to start indexing, parsing publicly available email newsletters, right? So these are your MailChimps, your iContact, any of these platforms where they have, public, indexable, as far as I understand, content on there, right? And this is positioned primarily to e-commerce platforms, although there's probably ways to utilize this outside of e-commerce, of course. The idea is Google is looking to expand their horizons into the information that they index. So now it's theoretical that you could have an email newsletter that you essentially intended to only go to your mailing list, that unless you particularly or specifically opt out, Google could use that information in their search results, right? And they made an announcement a couple months ago, letting users know that this was happening, right? And even provided an option whereby you can actually add and I forget the URL, it's in the blog post, a particular email address that tells Google, like, hey, we want you to actually index our email list. And so we're going to put your, moniker at Gmail or googlemail.com email in our mailing list to help push that process along, right? It's hard to tell exactly what they're doing. My theory, outside of just purely indexing, kind of force indexing these HTML-based email frames, as some platforms have, is, which I think is why they made the announcement and said, hey, if you don't want to do this, you have to opt out. They're really not asking for permission. They're basically saying, we're doing this. If you don't want it, then opt out. So it's a forced opt-in. But my theory is, because Google looks at Gmail accounts, is that if I have, let's say, a private Gmail or email marketing list rather, and I send it to you, Jesse, and it gets into your Gmail inbox, that Google sees that and now starts to build references back to, Enleaf, to our brand, and starts to build an additional contextual roadmap based off of that. I don't have any hard data to back that up, but just understanding how Google works and understanding that, the information they parse is not just search, it's Gmail, it's Google Drive. They look at all this stuff and they factor it into various different systems that I wouldn't be surprised if that is also what they're doing, especially since this is a forced opt-out option. But on the flip side, my mind goes to, how can I use this to my advantage, right? I could literally create an email list of one, sending it just to Google with the context or relevance that I want them to understand, much like we used to do keyword stuffing in search,
Sure.
right? I could create a custom email that's just for Google that says, okay, Enleaf is, the best SEO company in Spokane, or, whatever context or relevance I want to communicate to them. My gray/black hat starts to come on and think about, how can I use this new availability to my advantage, right? So,
Right. It's crazy interesting. And if nothing else too, I think everybody maybe should read between the lines. You're kind of inferring it, but
yeah,
like they're digesting this information. You know what I mean? If it's out there, if
right.
it's basically on a web page, Google's privy to it. And I guess the other side of that too is back to your being active in all these channels as a local marketer nowadays.
Hmm.
Hey, make sure you're sending out email newsletters as well, right? Not
Right.
only to dominate in your local area and be a rock star,
Yeah.
but yeah, Google's reading that too now, right? And
Yeah.
even if that you mentioned maybe that email could show up in search results, even if it doesn't, they're still parsing it out and reading it, and it's part of your
Hmm.
encyclopedia within Google, if you will,
Exactly. Yeah.
information about you. So get it out there for your prospects, for your clients, and for all the bots and AI agents, right? Like just
Hmm.
be active and just crush it out there in all your marketing channels. Bring in
Yep.
support or professionals. If you can't do all this, you need to do it all, So
Hmm.
that's
Correct.
crazy interesting. And just whatever the next thing is, right? Just if it's digital, let's just assume it kind of matters going forward, or it'll get sucked up like a sponge. Another thing I wanted to ask you about for everybody listening, I meant to ask this earlier when we were talking a little bit more on the AI side, Adam, is you mentioned a tool. I haven't personally used this yet, but I picked this up on a different show or something I heard you on, make.com,
Sure.
for bringing in different AI tools, right? You
Yeah.
it stuck out to me. Yeah, I must have been listening to it because you mentioned like Zapier, which is a tool I
Yeah.
think a lot of people use. I use it all the time.
Mhm.
Great for connecting different things together
Yeah.
easily. Um, is that what this is within regards to AI? And do you have any kind of working example maybe for, again, the local business owners, marketing managers listening on
Mhm.
how can they leverage this? Not so much to get found, but
Sure.
just to do things within their business. Sounds pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of different systems now. There's a make.com. Of course, Zapier has been around for a while and they're doing a lot of good stuff integrating AI. NAN is another tool, much like in the realm of Make. And then even some other systems like we have some systems that integrate, various LLMs into Google Sheets using Google Apps Script, although there are third-party plugins um, that also do this process with no code, right? And so all of these systems can and should be used for automating and systemizing processes, right? And really honestly, like with these, you're kind of limited, one, to your imagination, and then two, to your familiarity with the tools. However, most of the tools at this point are WYSIWYG based editor tools, with general like drag and drop flow logic where you log into your various platforms. Take one example. You could, with little experience, a YouTube tutorial, which there are plenty of them, build a system where you put out one message and it syndicates to all your social media channels, right? That's one of those quick and dirty automations I see people typically do and start out with. But taking that further, figure out what are your own business processes that you repeat, every single day or very commonly. I know, for instance, we've built a number of tools internally to help streamline, processes that we do often. Right? Let's take press releases as an example. We have a Google Sheet tool that uses a series of prompts um, inside of Google Sheets that allows us to um, essentially automate press releases. So what we are able to do is basically take answers, we have a series of set questions that we ask for every press release. And then we have the answers that are provided often from the client. And then it will auto generate a press release in an AP style format. And then we just do a simple editing process just to make sure it looks all kosher. But then we now no longer have to do the heavy lifting of having a writer create that press release piece, right? And we can use the same model for things like blog posts, even books, right? I have a whole system now that will create a whole business book within a matter of minutes just by answering a small series of questions. However, like inside your own business, there's probably, plenty of things specific to you that you can start automating and systemizing. And I think that's part of the key with a lot of this is um, we're going to have to become more lean and efficient as businesses just because these tools allow a lot more of a technological um, like leveling effect, right? So take advantage of it now, because if you don't, your competitors probably eventually will, right? And so just start thinking, what is it that we do day in and day out that we can automate or systemize to impact what we do and do it more efficiently.
Yeah. Just like if you weren't concerned about search engines in the early 2000s, they're just, everybody uses them now, right?
Right.
It's part of what we do. It's the fabric of
Yep.
finding things, buying things, living and existing almost. AI seems in the ether, seems kind of crazy, like some technological wave that's coming, but no, it's here. It'll evolve under our feet and under our noses
Mm-hmm.
as we go forward. Start playing with it now. I mean, you've kind of said the same thing multiple ways here, but like get in there, get in the mix,
Yeah.
be educated. If there is a big shift that happens on any given date or time coming forward, now you'll at least be educated preliminarily on what you're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with, what you're seeing, and able to take advantage instead of saying, okay, now I need to pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be mid or behind the pack, at that
Yeah.
point. So get in there early. Um, Last area I have to kind of throw at you here, Adam, unless you have anything you want to expand on or drop some knowledge on, is to talk
Yeah,
about.
nothing specific. I mean, uh, yeah, great questions so far. So I had,
Thank you.
really enjoyed kind of, talking through some of these things with you. But yeah, what else do you got for me?
I like some of the things that you say over the years about leadership, kind of
Uh-huh.
being an entrepreneur, and whether it be investing into different things as well, understanding where your money's coming from, accumulating wealth,
Sure.
delegating, just so many things. I think you're on point for how to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
As somebody trying to make money and provide for your family and help everybody else and just be a good person. What are some tips or some things that you've learned along the way? Doesn't have to be straight marketing or
Mm-hmm.
applicable to digital marketing and stuff here. But to help everybody listen, again, managers, entrepreneurs themselves, leadership, scaling, what kind of lessons have you learned along the way that you really feel you want to put back out there for everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think it obviously depends on people's DNA, their business DNA, so to speak. But I know for me personally, I sleep better at night knowing that I have a diversity in like money streams and income, right? One of that comes from running an agency with multiple clients. Unlike a day job, there's not a single point of failure. But even in addition to that, I take a percentage of everything that I take home each and every month and reinvest a lot of that. Number one, back into myself, right? With masterminds, networking groups, training materials. But beyond that, looking at things like stocks and real estate. And I've done that incrementally throughout the years so that if and when, we face disruption, I have other things that are my safety net, right? And I find that as a business owner and entrepreneur, having that safety net also allows you to not make decisions out of desperation, right?
Great
It's
point.
also why I suggest people that are thinking about going out on their own, maybe they have a day job, have a really good nest egg, save up 6 months to a year of equivalent salary before you make that jump so that when you start your entrepreneurial uh, adventure, so to speak, you're not going to be desperate to take on less than favorable clients or do things that go against
Yeah.
your business acclimate or um, any of that kind of thing, right? So I'm a big believer in diversity or diversification rather, and making money work for you, right?
And really that provides some security. Yeah, I think you have some great points there. Um, Whether somebody's starting out on their own, branching off, like you said, get that nest egg going, just the headspace that you're able to be in when you're not, every decision is critical. Can we get bread this week or not?
Right.
Yeah, you're going to plot your course and stick to it if if you can kind of shed some of that stress, right? And have that perspective. I really like that. I really like that for everybody.
Thanks.
I think that's about it for me, Adam. Great knowledge. We kind of covered a range of topics, but really all centered around, I think, digital marketing and helping people grow their business. 2025 is going to be interesting. We're about halfway through here. I don't think we're done seeing evolution in this space at all. So
no, it's going to be wild. Try your best, and I'm speaking to myself as much as everybody else, but try your best to enjoy it, not get too anxious about it. And just enjoy the ride. I think that's all you can do when there is unknowns, right? There's this big fear of unknown, but also understand that, with new challenges and problems, there are also new opportunities. And that's, I think, the thing that keeps me going, when things get tough or when it gets a little bit, rocky as far as, well, what does this look like, right? Just know that there will be other opportunities out there. And if you're open to it, you'll be there to embrace it.
Yeah. Somebody's going to do it, right?
Yeah.
Might as well be you
right?
or me or us. So for sure. All right. Thanks, Adam. Hope to have you on again in a future show here. Talk more about this as things will change. But in the meantime, appreciate it.